Good morning and welcome to this edition of the Kitchings Table. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings. As always, Tuesday mornings is our day, our time, 10 a.m. right here on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, and GPAC 23 are the other platforms you may find us. So if you want to follow us, go there, check us out. Send a question or comment in to the station. I'm sure they'd be glad to hear from you and let us know if we're doing a good job or if there's a topic that you may want to talk about or hear about or learn some more information about. And we are always happy to bring you whatever information we can as it based on what we think might be of some newsworthy information, whatever. We try to bring you something that will make you think, cause you to go into the depths of the research mind inside your mind to just consider what we're bringing to you. And of course, some of the things we bring to you are things that you really hadn't thought about or don't give much thought to, but now that it's been brought to your attention, I didn't know that, or that's interesting. I like to learn more about that, or I'm so glad that Earl brought that to us because it was quite an interesting topic and discussion and chat that he brought to us. So today, September 13th, we're going to bring you today's topic, and it's titled Spare Me the Small Details. And the key word in that is spare. And when we think about spare, is either a key or a tire. Well, we're not going to be talking about keys. But the key to what we're going to be talking about today is based on the industry called the tire industry, a phenomenal industry that is a global industry, something that consumes countries from around the world. And because of this industry and because what it has evolved into, it is a major player in the economics of world trade. And I'll just share this with you. If the tire industry goes down, if there's ever any interruption in the tire industry, I'd just like for you to think about all of the vehicles that can't get new tires, all of the new vehicles that won't get tires to go on their cars or motorcycles or jet planes, trucks. If this industry falls into some type of economic downturn or just in a tightness where it's just strapped and they can't do anything, things will stop moving. And that's why we're bringing this to you today, because in thinking about, something as simple as a tire and what it does, and the fact that transportation, what we ride in, what we ride on, without tires, things don't move from one point to the other. So in our research, a volume of 2,268 million. Now you got to think about that number. 2,268 million units were produced in 2021. And they're predicting that by 2027, that will see a 2.8% increase. So it'll probably be closer to 2.5 million. It'll go up towards 3,000 million units. And it didn't break it down by vehicle or machine. When you think about all the things that we see tires on, we become so impervious to some things. We forget that tires are as important as they are. For instance, if you're in a warehouse, this is a very simple sample. If you're in a warehouse, to get products from the floor of the warehouse into the back of a semi-trailer, you need a forklift. If the tires on the forklift are not there, that forklift does not move. The product does not move to the truck. Then if there are problems with the tires on the truck does not move from the warehouse to getting it to the stores. So you see the critical importance of tires are that we need them in order to move, not just America, because it's not just in America, because tires are important to every vehicle around the world, no matter what. So when COVID-19 happened, a lot of things kind of slowed down or stopped. However, the tire industry had a little setback, but not as much as others. Now, when we talk about tires, of course, most of us think, well, it's made from rubber. Once upon a time, yes, that was the major raw material where tires were made from. But today, in 2022, much of the materials in tires are synthetic. They still have some natural rubber, but then there's synthetic rubber. Then there's carbon black, polyester, rayon, steel, silica, and vulcanization accelerator. Those are the things that go into the makeup of tires. And of course, we understand what tires' functions are. They are used for vehicles or machinery to travel over surfaces, to make sure that those vehicles move about smoothly. And the companies that make these tires, while we know of some of them, that's not all of them. When we looked up the manufacturers, and of course, you always start with the top ones and filter down. And in our pantry section today, we're going to give you the companies, who they are, the automotive industry, and some other industries within the tire industry, just to give you an idea of what type of impact tires have on our lives. So as we continue, or as the companies who are manufacturing these tires continue to look for ways to make a better product, they're looking for better ways for there to be fuel efficiency from the tires by keeping them more inflated and as opposed to deflated, and to reinforce the structure of the tires so that they last a little longer. Now, most of us know that when we go to get new tires, the tires will say, well, you can get them to go 30,000 miles, 40,000 miles, 50,000 miles, up to 60,000 miles for some tires, depending on what they are. And of course, the more miles you can get on a tire, of course, the more expensive that tire is. However, when you think about the cost of a set of tires, as low as maybe $200 for a set of tires for a small car, and $1,000+ for tires on a much larger car, which are much wider tire, that varies. And when we talk about the tire itself, and again, we think about rubber. Now, there is the rubber plant, there is the rubber plant, but let's not confuse that with the trees that they extract the raw material from trees to make tires. And you may ask, well, a rubber tree? For the simplicity of this, yes, a rubber tree, but it's really called a Hiva tree, and it originates in Brazil, South America. And it has existed there for the last couple of 100 years, since the mid 1800s. And between Brazil and India, this is where we will find those plantations where you will have hundreds upon thousands of these trees, so that you can extract the sap from the trees in order to send them to the plant to process them to create rubber or synthetic rubber. So you basically, if you've ever seen them take the sap, if you've ever seen sap taken from a pine tree, they remove some of the bark, make a cut incision in the tree, and they let the sap drip into containers, collect the containers of the sap, and then they put them in big vats and take them off to the manufacturing plants. Same thing happens with these Hiva trees for the rubber industry, for the tire industry. So when they take these the sap from these trees and send them off, that is the basis for tires. HEVEA trees, originally from Brazil. So what are tires made of when you break it down? I think a lot of times we assume that tires are made totally from rubber, and that's not really the case. Only about 19% of a tire is made out of rubber. So the next time you go get a new set of tires at your local tire store, and you look at the tires they have and the number of tires there are, and you just think about tires, or you pass by a place. I know I was passing by a place the other day, and just the used tires caught my attention because of the amount of used tires sitting on the property. But what bothered me the most about the used tires on the property was this: not so much of the number of used tires, but the fact that used tires in places like this are basically collection and havens for mosquitoes. Because when it rains, the water sits in the tire. Mosquitoes lay eggs in water. So that really concerned me, because it's like, when you think about the number of tires that sit there, and some of them can't be used on cars anymore, and they're just sitting there day in, day out. The heat gets to them, the weather gets to them, rain gets to them, they deteriorate. Isn't there something they can do with all those used tires? I know that a company or companies now shred tires for a compound to layer fields, athletic fields, for better drainage. There has to be some other ways to use old tires in a way that can be productive for use in our society. But going back to what makes up tires, so 19% is rubber. The main synthetic rubber polymer is a butadiene rubber and styrene butadiene rubber. That makes about 24%. And then there's the steel in the belts and the beads of the tires. So you know about steel belted radials and steel belted tires. And they serve to improve wear and performance, handling, stiffening the tire itself. Then the textiles. these types of fabrics, cords, reinforce. So sometimes when you look at a tire, you might look and see something that looks like some type of nylon in the tire, and that's part of it, nylon. Polyester cord, rayon cord, nylon cord, aramid cord. They help with the stability. Then there are the fillers, the carbon black and silicas that reinforce the rubber. So they improve on the tearing of the rubber, and it also helps with the resistance because, tires roll all the time over the road. So you bounce on potholes or things in the road. So, it's all kinds of things to tear up a tire. Then you have the antioxidants, to keep the rubber from breaking down because of temperature and oxygen exposure. Heat, the weather, the temperature, and the oxygen breaks down that rubber. Then you have the anti-ozonants, and they are to impede the effects of exposure to ozone. And then finally, you have the curing systems of sulfur and zinc oxide to cure the rubber so that it can hold up over the many, many miles you put on it. So those are the eight components that you will find in tires, all kinds of tires. And there are a lot of different types of tires. Again, think about the vehicles and machinery that you see in everyday life. Yeah, cars, trucks, and I'm not talking about pickup trucks. I'm talking about trucks that carry products, merchandise from one place to the other. So those are the tractor trailer trucks. So you see those tires. Then you think about tires that you see on heavy equipment in construction, such as tractor tires, the big heavy duty tractors. When you look at those, again, we talk about the tires on forklifts. What about motorcycles and bicycles? Think about those tires. Think about the tires that are on airplanes. From your private small planes to the large commercial carriers to the even larger military planes. And as I said, in our pantry section today, we're going to talk about those aspects of the tire industry. So when we talk about the tire industry, as I already mentioned, these Kiva trees started out in Brazil. And because companies like Bridgestone and Toyo, Goodyear, Continental, Yokohama are the big companies that make these tires, they need lots of raw materials to make tires. Let me just add one other tire because it's a different type of tire. That's why I mentioned the vehicles that we talk about that use tires. The automobile racing industry. At those races, the manufacturers send truckloads of tires that the race car teams purchase on site for their race cars. So more than this part of the article states that more than 200 ingredients are used in the compounding of tires based on a government research study. And although the United States probably uses the most amount of tires, the United States has no natural rubber production company of its own in the United States. It completely depends on imports. Completely. The tires, the raw materials, that is. We We don't grow tree. We don't have the trees where they take the sap from. Excuse me. So, over 90% of global production is in Southeast Asia. And when there's a natural shortage, it impacts defense, transportation, medicine, and consumer markets. Natural rubber costs about 35 cents a pound in 2002, up to $2.80 a pound in 2011. But then in 2020, it said it was about 89 cents a pound. So as you can see, once what once was cheap escalated and now is back down again. Now, when we talk about these Hever trees and the process, the research says you have to wait 5 to 7 years for the first tapping from a Hever tree. So not only do you have to make sure you've grown all these trees, so just think about the fact that, if you go to a tree farm, which many of us may not even be aware of, but there are farms where they just grow trees, pine trees, for instance. Now you have these Hever trees. You have nut trees like cashew trees, pecan trees. So you have trees that are used on farms just for their raw materials, such as nuts. But then you have sap from pine trees to make different things. And now you have sap from Hever trees for making rubber. But it said you have to wait 5 to 7 years for the first tapping. Then it'll take a year for the tree to provide enough for one single tire. Take a year. So how many trees do you need? Excuse me again. So to put out a new set of tires for a full-size sport utility vehicle requires an annual output of at least a half a dozen trees. So for every 4 tires on an SUV, you need 6 Hever trees. That gives you the magnitude of how large these plantations where these trees are. And they're very beautiful trees. They have kind of a white looking trunk. And, they are very, very beautiful. And the sap, or in some respects they call it latex, comes from these trees. And the seeds of rubber trees contain 43% of non-edible oil with a high amount of saturated and monounsaturated fatty acids. The seed oil is used as a antimicrobial, antifungal, antioxidant. So it's got a lot of uses. More than 10 million hectares. 10 million hectares, not acres, 10 million hectares of rubber trees have been cultivated across the world, producing more than 12 million tons of rubber based on the 2013 research. 12 million tons of rubber. And you need 10 million hectares of rubber trees. That's the amount of land you need. You need that many acres of land. So the rubber business is a huge, huge, huge business. Huge. And it all started in South America. Because up until the creation of rubberized tires, the world moved on wooden wheels. Not tires, just a wooden wheel with spokes or whatever. But in 1839, Charles Goodyear accidentally dropped rubber and sulfur on a hot stovetop, causing it to char like leather, yet remain plastic and elastic. Charles Goodyear, 1839, an accident, as some things are in the manufacturing world. Vulcanization, a refined version of this process, transformed the white sap from the bark of the heaver tree into an essential product of this industrial age. So Charles Goodyear just kind of messing around some kind of way with sulfur and rubber, and it just happened to be dropped on a hot stove, and all of a sudden, the idea for rubber became a rubberized product for use became popular. Then in 1895, Henry Ridley, who was the head of the Singapore Botanical Garden, persuaded 2 coffee growers to plant 2 acres of heaver trees. 12 years later, more than 300,000 acres of heaver trees grew rubber in plantations in Ceylon and Malaya. That's in Southeast Asia. And new innovations increased efficiency and production of rubber doubled every 2 years. Rubber could be produced at only a fraction of the cost of collecting wild rubber in Brazil. So in Southeast Asia, they were able to do it a little bit more efficiently and in a lot more abundance. By 1910, the Brazilian production had fallen 50%. In 1914, Brazil's market share was down to about 30%, down to 20% in 1918, and down to 1.3% by 1940. So a place that had basically cornered the market on the sap for making rubber lost basically the entire market to Southeast Asia. It just left because it was cheaper. Now, in reading about the history of the rubber industry, please take note that that industry did not become successful without the usage of cheap labor. So you can parallel that industry in Southeast Asia and in Brazil to the similar industry of cotton and other agricultural products in the United States during that same timeline in the 1800s when the Industrial Revolution was ramping up. But cheap labor in South America was what was used to get this raw material to the plants to manufacture rubber. And it came at a steep price. Native Indians in South America had genocide created on them because they were the cheap labor used to farm and tap into these trees for the materials. And it's interesting that the way this article about the history of rubber was written, it called the guys who were at the upper echelon of the tire world, they call them rubber barons. Rubber barons. Does a rubber baron sound similar to the title plantation owner? So these guys were so fixated on making sure they got the most out of their plantations where we had all these trees and they were getting this sap that they were doing some horrible things to the natives in order to keep that cheap labor in place to farm the sap from these trees. Abusing women, abusing men, abusing children for the sake of this product, this raw material that they turned into rubber and became millionaires. That story is a story you don't know much about. Similar time frame, similar things going on. Not just in the United States of America, in North America, but in South America too. We're going to move on. So the Second World War threatened to shift the rubber wealth. The wealth was in the United States, but World War II was going to move that. With Japan taking over Southeast Asia. And this is why we have to understand the economics, the world economics, global economics of today to understand why having partnerships with countries throughout the world is important. Because if you don't have a partnership, a good partnership with a country, for instance, that manufactures or produces raw materials to make tires, you're going to have a problem because you don't have the raw materials in your country to make them. And if there's a difference of partnership working together, that industry stops. So with World War II, the United States was concerned about running out of rubber because in addition to tires, which are made out of rubber synthetic materials, you have hoses, seals, like gaskets and things like that. Seals, when you put metal to metal, you need a rubber seal or a gasket there to help make it tight. Valves, wiring, all requiring rubber. The Rubber Development Corporation, the chief overseer of rubber acquisition, sought other places to get rubber. They went into the Amazon, and that's where, in Brazil, that's where it is, the Amazon, to find more high-yielding, superior products. And they did that. So they found this down in South America. But at the same time, they worked on synthetic rubber that over time replaced natural rubber. And by 1964, synthetic rubber made up 75% of the market. So you found a raw material and you found a way to blend it with the products or the raw materials I mentioned to you. And now you have synthetic rubber. Today, about 50% of every auto tire and 100% of all aircraft tires are made of natural rubber. Of this rubber, 85% is imported from Southeast Asia. So when you talk about an industry that must export raw materials or export the product themselves, disrupting ships carrying these products from Southeast Asia to the United States or Southeast Asia to other parts of the world is critically important. And the other factor is natural enemies of these trees. If these trees become infected, the industry will take a dramatic hit. So you have two things working, man and Mother Nature. The disease to the trees or the stoppage of the products flowing from where they're manufactured to they're tooled up and made for tires, all kinds of tires. So those are the key things that we have to remember. That is pretty much a short synopsis of the history of the tire industry. So real quick, let me go through a couple of things about the market segmentation of the tire industry. There are two types of tires, radial and bias, or bias ply. Radial tires have belts that are perpendicular to the tire, and they have steel in them. And then the bias use more nylon, and they overlap to make those tires. Tire breakdowns come in passenger vehicles, light commercial, heavy duty, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, off-road. Then you have tires broken up by the season, all season, winter tires, summer tires. Depending on what part of the world you live in, what region you live in, probably here in the United States, most people maybe drive on all season, but up north, you're going to be more of the winter tire. Places where there are a lot of snow, the winter tire. Then places where it's hot, you're going to have the summer tire. Then when we talk about the regions, North America, Asia Pacific, India, South Korea, Australia, Europe, Latin America, the Middle East, all these places make up the regions where you have a lot of tires. So in our pantry section today, we're going to talk about the companies of the rubber and tire industry, their names, and I'm sure you're going to recognize many of them, give you a ranking of them, and then the companies, the automobile companies and their rankings, the largest manufacturers of automobiles. And then we're going to conclude with just a couple of tidbits on those tires that we don't think about a lot. We just see them, but don't think about them. So the top manufacturers of companies, as listed, Michelin, and I'm going to give you the name of the company and the country where they're manufactured. So Michelin is ranked number one, is made in France. Bridgestone is made in Japan. Continental is made in Germany. Goodyear is made in the United States and is ranked fourth. Tsutomoto is Japan, ranked fifth. Hankook, sixth, made out of South Korea. Pirelli is Italy. Yokohama is Japan. ZC Rubber is China. Maxxis is Taiwan, China. Toyo is Japan. Linglong is China. Giddy is Singapore. Cooper, United States. Apollo, India. And Seoul-un is China. Those are the top 16 companies. Goodyear is the largest tire manufacturer in the United States, followed by Cooper. And as I said, Michelin is the largest manufacturer in Europe, followed by Continental. Zhongqi is the largest in China, followed by Linglong. And then Apollo, as I indicated to you, was in India. So these are the companies: Michelin, Bridgestone, Continental, Goodyear, Tsutomoto, Pirelli, Yokohama, Hankook, Toyo, Kumho. Now, as you can see, and you're going to see the parallel, because it's an interesting parallel. We talk about tires and vehicles. So I listed or named 1, 2, 3, 4 companies out of Japan that make tires. They're in the top 11. Top 11. 4 out of the 11. United States has 2. China has 3. If you include Taiwan, China, that would be 4. So then you have South Korea, Singapore. So as you can see, and then India. So you can see Southeast Asia, that region, Southeast, India and Southeast China and Japan, that Asian area is critically important to the tire industry. Notice the company Firestone was not even in the top 16. Although they make tires, they're just not one of the top companies. So we talk about the four companies in Japan that make tires, the largest one being Bridgestone, followed by Sumitomo, followed by Yokohama, followed by Toyo. Toyo, you can pretty much connect the dots with that. Toyo, Toyota. So 2019, the global tire market stood around 2,240 million units, as we stated earlier, and it's going to grow. So here are the top automobile manufacturers in the world, the top 5 in the world. And of that 5, 2 of them are located in what country? Japan. And how many of the tire companies are located in Japan? Now, think about this. You drop a bomb on a country and devastate it. You cause their military to totally surrender in a world war where they thought they were going to have a different impact on the United States than they did. They almost pulled it off, but they weren't able to. So then you drop this atomic bomb on Japan and destroy a country in a certain part of it, Hiroshima. But now that same country, it's an island now. It's not even connected to the mainland. It's an island. Japan is an island. It is the number 1 manufacturer and the number 5 manufacturer of automobiles in the world. The number 2 ranked tire manufacturer in the world. So they own 2 and 5 in tires, 1 and 5 in vehicles. In Japan. And of course, we know they make probably the finest vehicles, quality-wise, in the world for a very long time. Toyota and Honda, it doesn't get too much better than that. So after Toyota, you got Volkswagen is in Germany, Daimler, which is in Germany, which is Mercedes-Benz. If you don't know who Daimler is, let me just help clarify that for you. Followed by the only American company in the top 5, Ford Motor. Followed by Honda. Those are the top 5 automobile manufacturers, or the largest manufacturers in the world. Toyota, Volkswagen, Daimler, Ford, Honda. Put the pieces together. So now, those are pretty much your automobile tires. But then we think about motorcycles. Motorcycles is a big industry. I didn't go into the top motorcycle manufacturers, anything like that. But just to give you an idea of cycles, motorcycles, motorized bikes. So they have 3 different tires for a motorized bike or motorcycle. They have a tube tire, a tubeless tire, and a solid tire. A tire with an inner tube is a tube tire. So, in your bicycles, when you were growing up, you had a bicycle. If you had a flat tire, there was an inner tube on the inside. You had to take that inner tube out, patch it up, put it back inside the actual tire, put it back on the rim, and inflate it in order for you to be riding on those 2 tires. Tubeless means the tire does not contain air inside the tire. So it doesn't have that inner tube. It's just a tire where you tightly fit on the rim and fill it up with air. And solid tires, airtight inner chamber, and a tire like that of a forklift might be a solid tire, just no air, just a solid rubberized tire. So then we look at the industrial tires are solidly constructed tires used on the wheels of heavy equipment and machinery in manufacturing, construction, military, transportation, warehouse, agricultural, and production industries. Due to their tough construction, these tires are used on large commercial vehicles to support and transport heavy goods or perform tasks in warehouses. And I've already shared with you what they are. So you have trucks, forklifts, buses, planes, other industrial vehicles. So I want you to think about what you pay for a tire on your car or your pickup truck. What a set of those costs. And then I'm going to give you some numbers on the cost for industrial tires. One tire. So the next time you're riding along and you see construction on the highway and you see those big earth movers with the big tires on the tractors or other type tractors, I want you to think of those as heavy duty industrial tires. Heavy duty industrial tires. And you just can't go to a tire store to put them on that equipment. So companies like Ring Power, Caterpillar, John Deere, companies like that have to repair those tires, but they're not like your common automobile tire or truck tires where they deflate or anything like that. They may wear out from the tread, but they're not going to, deflate, things like that. So a heavy duty industrial tire, one tire costs $1,300. $1,300. It may be more than that for a larger tire. So if you look at one of those earth movers and it's got 4 of those tires on there, that's about $6,000 in tires, just the tires itself. Think about that. $1,300 for one of those tires. Now, when we move to airplane tires on commercial airplanes, not private, not the small private. I'm talking about when you fly from an airport or when you see a military cargo plane, the tires that go on those aircraft, they cost about $2,100 each. They'll last for a while. They have to, because every time they land, so you get on a plane and it makes 4 stops. That means those tires hit that pavement 4 times. They've got to hold up, because a plane cannot land on one deflated tire, because it will cause that plane, to be unbalanced, and that's not a good thing. So those tires must be very, very durable. And the companies that make these tires, you have plants that make the tires for automobiles and trucks, but the companies and the plants where they make the big tires, those are some very, very large facilities, and they require a lot more tree sap from the Heaver trees than just what you need on your average everyday automobile. That is our show for today here on WBIS Awesome Radio, WBIS LP 106.9 FM. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us today on the Kitchings Table. We hope that today's subject matter was informative to you, gave you some insight into an industry that we don't think about a lot. The fact that these companies must use this much raw materials in order to make these many tires every day, year in, year out. And the global impact that they have on countries that they serve. So here in the United States, the amount of tires that we use on our vehicles, since we have more vehicles, not just cars, motorcycles, planes, buses, heavy duty trucks, tractors, things of that nature, we consume the most. And if anything interrupted that, our economic output would be different. So I thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings, every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. here on WBIS LP 106.9 FM. We will bring you another edition of the Kitchings Table. Until next Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock, we hope you have a great week. Remember, stay safe. Don't forget to vote or register to vote. And as always, make it a great day for somebody else. Take care.